Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, my friends, I hope you've enjoyed having these conversations these past few days as much as I have. I thoroughly enjoy this. I think that this is critically important. It allows us to talk about the ideas behind why we believe what we believe, the way that this nation was founded, why that matters. And again, the reason here is because everybody has an opinion on politics, which is fine. Everybody should have an opinion. Although I think maybe some people should realize, look, I don't know enough about it to form an opinion, but there's nothing, we're free people, you can think what you want. What we've got to get better at doing is giving people explanations and frameworks through which to view events. Now, I know in a lot of cases, we'll be barking up the proverbial wrong tree here. However, just think, my friends, just think if we were all able to persuade just one more person. Think about that. If we were all able to persuade one more person, what if every person who voted for Trump persuaded one more person to vote Republican? I mean, that is, at some point, is statistically not possible, but the point is, what if 10% of, say, Trump's voters, roughly 75 million or whatever it was, what if 10% of them converted or persuaded 2 or 3 people or 5 people? You can see that you can really move the needle quickly, my friends. So that's why these things matter. It's why they matter a lot, and I've enjoyed talking about them. In fact, this may surprise you. But I don't enjoy talking about politics. Now, I love talking about the issues. I love talking about the why. I love talking about the ideas that are behind these things, the worldview. But when it's just the politics, the things happening behind the scenes, that's not my thing. It just isn't. I want to talk about the ideas. I hope you recognize that. And I hope you enjoy that too. So, that being said, this is our third day of kind of going through this. And the first 2 days, we've spoken about power. And, well, we spoke about truth the first day. We spoke about power yesterday. And now we're going to deal with the next question in this kind of linear thought process here. Who should hold power and how much of it should they have? That's where we're headed today, and a lot of pieces to that puzzle along the way that we'll put together as well, my friends. And by the way, let me say this. This is going to be part of a multi-series. I don't know how long we're going to do these. I've got it outlined a ways out, but I reserve the right to stop and talk about anything that's happened along the way and say, today we're going to talk about this issue. I reserve the right to do that. You know, when I was a kid, this is the truth. My father, who's a character, my mom used to make, when my brother and I were in high school, she would make Rice Krispie treats. Apparently, back in the day, we loved these. I don't remember liking them as much as I don't really care for them now, but we must have. And we must have eaten those babies pretty quick. And when Dad knew Mom was making Rice Krispie, this is the true story. This makes me blush and chuckle a little bit, but this is my father being my father. When he knew Mom was making the Rice Krispie treats, my dad would announce to the family, and it was just the 4 of us, my mom and dad, brother and I, my dad would announce to the group, I reserve 1 row. I'm not sure how often he got that 1 row. And of course, the pan was longer one way than it was another way. So my brother and I probably found a way to give him the smallest amount of real estate possible for his Rice Krispie treats. But I reserve, my friends, one row. I reserve the right to pause this series on whatever happens in the news narrative, and that's what we will talk about if and when the time comes, which I'm sure that it will. I just don't know how long I plan on doing this. I think that this is, of all the things that we talk about, I like to use, and I think this is what I learned from Rush, you use the issues of the day as a springboard to talk about the deeper underlying reasons and the thinking and the why. And we do that. But if you're only getting into the issues that come up I don't want to say by happen chance, because a lot of this is orchestrated, but to some degree happen chance, you never have a formula. And so I'm trying to systematically lay the groundwork for why we are conservative, why we should think about things a certain way, why we should use this particular prism through which to view the issues of the day. So that's where we're headed. I appreciate you joining us, my friends. Thank you so much for being here. You've worked hard. You've made smart choices. Now it's about making sure that the effort counts, not just today, but for the future. Full Suite Wealth helps forward-thinking people with a coordinated approach to wealth, legacy, and legal planning, including private equity, private credit, and option strategies. They'll help you see the big picture, plan ahead, and make your success truly matter for the people you care about most. The goal is a plan that stands the test of time. Visit fullsuitewealth.com today. That's fullsuitewealth.com. Build your legacy, secure your future. Okay, so we've talked about truth. We've talked about power. Now we're going to talk about the question that then says, who should hold that power and how much should they have? Now, human beings are capable of good. I think that this is obvious. People can do good things, but human beings are capable of corruption. People are capable of evil. In fact, the Bible tells us that all of us have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. We've turned away from His standard and we've pursued our own selfish interests, the things that we want, to heck with everything else, and we've set our sights there, and every last one of us, have done things that we should not have done. We are capable, humanity is capable of untold evil. You look back, again, just look back at the 20th century alone, and you will find unfathomable amounts of evil inflicted on humanity. You look at, of course, the obvious example is the Holocaust and Adolf Hitler, but you can look at the gulags under Stalin in Soviet Russia, the killing fields with Pol Pot, Mao and his reign in China. The list goes on and on and on, my friends. You can go back through history and look at people like Genghis Khan. You can look at the invention of types of execution that I don't even want to talk about on here, crucifixion being one of them, impaling people. There were people whose job it was to make death as prolonged and as painful as possible. It wasn't enough for these people just to say someone is not worthy of, someone can't be trusted. They've violated the trust bond by being too violent, and so we're going to end their life swiftly. They wanted them to suffer for days. I mean, some of these, I'm having images of some of these things that I know about that candidly I wish I didn't know about. Humanity is evil. Humanity is full of pride. Humanity is selfish. Humanity has a desire for control. Now that's too modest. Control is not necessarily a bad thing. For the Christian, we should submit to God's authority, but there are things that we should, quote unquote, take control over, responsibility for in our lives. But too often we use that desire for control to force things to be the way that we want, again, to heck with what everybody else thinks. And because human nature, this is the question, how do you view human nature? Because the way that you view human nature is going to determine, in part, the way you see politics. And I would say, for those of us who understand what I just said, and some people are shaking their head no to that, which is wild to me. I don't know how much history you have to learn to realize that what we have today, as far as it comes to a higher standard of living and freedom in this country, for example, as 21st century Americans, is the exception, not the norm. I mean, there's been poverty and death and oppression and slavery, and this stuff still exists today on planet Earth. I'm under no illusion here that it doesn't. People are murdered and oppressed and harmed and tortured by their own governments. That's happened throughout history. Human nature is flawed. The Bible calls it sin. It's an archery term, which means we missed the mark. We missed the mark. God had a target for us to hit, and we didn't hit it. In fact, in many cases, we weren't even shooting at the target. We were shooting 90 degrees off to the sides, or in some cases, maybe 180 degrees with our backs to the target, firing another direction. Reminds me, a couple of weeks ago, I was meeting my parents somewhere. We hadn't seen them in a month or so. And it was a big area. And they were in a parking garage, and they couldn't figure out where we were. And so we went to meet them, and I remember I was looking. It was big, and I poked my head. I couldn't completely go into this parking garage because the place where we were, there's security set up, and I would have had to go back through security. So I was kind of poking my head around and looking, and I see my parents way off in the distance walking the wrong direction. And I had my dad on the phone. I'm like, Dad, make a 180-degree turn. Where your back is facing now, turn and make your face that direction and walk that way, and you'll see me. And eventually they got down to us, and we were able to meet and get to dinner and all this sort of stuff. But the point is, that's how far off we are. That's how far off we are from the target sometimes. Sometimes 180 degrees off target. Humanity is flawed. The Bible calls it sin. And because of this, government power must be limited. You know, government is run by people. Is this a news flash to some people? Yeah, it's amazing. I remember I won't name who it was, but I'll just say someone in my extended family, how about that, who he hates corporations. And listen, I'm not here to universally love corporations or big corporations, right? I'm not talking about small business. I'm talking about big, massive corporations who, you know, in many instances, take advantage of people. Not always, but they certainly can. I'm under no illusion. They're run by people, right? They're run by people, just like government is run by people. But it's amazing to me. This individual thought they were the worst people in the universe when they were in corporate America. But I would say to him, you know, when these people are appointed to government roles, suddenly you got no problem with it, right? And this is often what happens. Even people like Obama would appoint people from corporate America to whatever, ambassadorship or to head some acronym, some multi-letter agency in the federal government. And suddenly, whatever that organization says, the FBI, the CIA, the FDA, whatever, suddenly you trust it. But you don't see that it's the same person that's now running it that you didn't trust at all when he was the CEO of Kellogg's. And I'm just picking a random company, but you get the point, right? So, but you're right to be skeptical of any person. I would say there's some people that never see any good and refuse to see it. I think that that's too far, but we should certainly at least be prepared to understand that people are flawed. And that's why government power should be limited. too many people, man, the communists, this is summarizes perhaps, I don't want to say the entire reason, although it's up there. It's very close to being the entire reason why their system, their worldview collapses. But they believe if only the right people run it, it will work, right? You'll hear them say this. In fact, I remember when I took that class, I've told you about it before, class at Butler University. I think it was my last semester, senior year, 2000, spring semester 2000. I took a class called Is Capitalism Really Better? It was led by a professor. There were 8 students, 4 females, 4 males. It was a 300-level political science class at Butler University, and the entire semester was spent discussing whether or not the commies had it right or America had it right. This professor had spent some time living in the Soviet Union, and you could tell he was quite fond of, well, at least the concept of Soviet utopianism. And he would tell us, it's not that the idea is wrong, we just didn't find the benevolent dictator. In fact, that's why I'll give you a little bit of secret here behind the show. You'll hear me from time to time call myself the benevolent dictator behind the microphone. It is, of course, joking, and it's pointing out the flaws of a broken worldview, which is that of communism. But that's how they look at it. If only they had found someone besides Joseph Stalin or besides, take your pick, Mikhail Gorbachev. It didn't matter. They needed somebody else. If you elect better leaders, your problems are solved. If you elect different leaders, the system of utopia will work. Now, I will tell you, when I was a student at Butler, there was this is a different professor, by the way, not the same one who taught the Soviet communism, the capitalism class versus communism class. A different professor, again, was a man. He had us write an opinion piece on the possibility of a utopia. And so it was an opinion piece, and so I shared my opinion, and I gave the reason for my opinion. And of course, my opinion is rooted firmly in, because I'm a Christian and I believe that the Bible is the inspired true word of God himself, I believe that what God says about our nature is true. And so we can never achieve a utopia this side of heaven because of our sin and our falls and our flaws and so forth, which I've explained earlier in this particular podcast. And so, but he wouldn't grade my paper. It's a true story. This was probably my sophomore year, I'm thinking. And so he put on my paper, my draft. You would turn in, from what I remember, you would turn in a draft and he would read it, basically say, yeah, you're on the right path or whatever. You need to change some things. He wouldn't grade my draft. So I had a meeting with him and told him, hey, just like you trust Karl Marx and these other leftists, the Communist Manifesto and everything else, I trust the Bible. And candidly, if you're going to cite that, why can't I cite this? Mine, by the way, my sources withstood some all the scrutiny possible. Yours is crumbled under the slightest bit of scrutiny, whatever. And I had to spend I basically wrote my paper explaining to him why I should be able to have my opinion. I remember I got a B-. It upset me very much, but probably spent more time on that than any other student in the class because I wasn't going to not share my opinion. Anyway, the point is that's what these people think. You can have a utopia, you can have a better society if you just elect the benevolent dictator, if you just elect better leaders, you'll have your problems solved. That, of course, is not living in reality. Government is run by the same human beings that live in the rest of society. This is why the founders didn't design our government assuming the leaders would be angels. In fact, Madison warned us against this. If men were angels, government would not be necessary. That's what they believed. That's what they knew. Instead, they designed a system to restrain power because they understood human nature. That's what they understood. That's why they made it the way they made it. That's why the separation of powers matters so much, because, my friends, if you give too much power to an individual, it will corrupt the individual. The old saying, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Take it to the bank. It is baked into our DNA. It's exactly it can be traced back to the Garden of Eden, my friends. It is in our nature, and we must build a system that, that complements, that's aware of, that lives in the same reality as that broken, sinful human nature. More to say, of course, on this. Take a quick little breather here. Let me ask you something. Would you rather take 2 soft gels a day or spend hours in a doctor's office talking about your cholesterol? I know what I would choose, and I'm even friends with my doctor. In fact, ran into him and his wife the other night as my wife and I were walking the dogs around town. But I got to be honest, I would rather bump into him in public than have to schedule appointments because my cholesterol is high. And listen, there's nothing wrong with having those appointments. And if you need them, set them and do what you need to do. Follow your doctors. Listen, I'm not here to get into that part of the conversation. What I'm here to tell you is that Solti is all natural. It's a clinically proven dietary supplement that lowers cholesterol. There's no prescriptions. There's no doctor's visits. It's not even a drug. You just take 2 soft gels a day, and that's all it takes to take care of your heart's health. It's done wonders for lots of people. It can do the same for you as well. So go to Solti.com, SOLTEA, Solti.com. Promo code Todd is going to get you a great deal. Now, you got to get a 3-month supply, but you're going to save 50% on that first 3-month supply, and you're going to get free shipping. It's a fantastic deal. It's at Solti.com. Promo code, again, is Todd. All you have to lose, my friends, are those high cholesterol numbers. Okay. So when we get back from the break, we are going to talk about human nature. We're going to talk about the reality of human nature. We're going to talk about good intentions and the impact that those have or don't have on human nature. We're going to talk about how power changes incentives and how good intentions can still produce bad systems. That's the way we're heading. I've got to take a break. Quick time out, my friends. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Again, I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. I love talking about these things. I think you can pick that up. If you want to get all the information, the links, if you want the written summaries, a little bit deeper dives, all you have to do is sign up for the Inner Circle. It is free. You'll get it every day about 5 o'clock. Although I noticed the other day with the time change, something didn't get caught in the system, so it went out at 6 o'clock. But regardless, my friends, you'll get it each weekday evening about that time. All you have to do to sign up, and it's totally free, sign up for the Inner Circle, is text the word truth, 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 to 317-785-1030. Again, text the word truth to 317-785-1030. Okay. So, now, I told you that we were going to talk about human nature next. So that's what we're going to do. Political systems, like it or not, depend upon our understanding and assumptions about human nature. Are people naturally trustworthy with power? Do they require restraints? What do we need to know about their nature? What are the things that we are inclined to do as a species? What are our weaknesses? What are our temptations? That stuff should matter, right? If we're trying to develop a government that is designed or tries its best to put safeguards in to protect us from the worst parts of ourselves, right? I mean, it stands to reason. It's why, my friends, when you have a business, you have multiple people that are overseeing the deposits, balancing the accounts. It's why there's financial audits to make sure that things are on the up and up. It's why you have to act reasonably. You can't be paranoid, but you also have to understand that if you leave people alone to their own devices, that there is an inclination to do things that we shouldn't do. And so again, I see this through the biblical lens. Humans are created in the image of God. We are created with the capacity to be creative. Sorry, I thought that sounds redundant, but yeah, we are made. We are given. We are like God, and I'm using air quotes back here. We're made in His image. We're not gods, but we're like Him. We're similar to Him in nature, not in ability. We're not. Certainly not in our perfection. Certainly not we're not omnipotent. We're not omnipresent. We're not eternal. But we have some of the same characteristics of God. For example, He's a creative being. We're creative beings because He's made us like Him. We're capable of being compassionate. We're capable of being good. But again, the Bible tells us there's no one good, no, not one. Because we're tarnished by the sin. All of us have fallen and turned from it. It doesn't mean that none of us have done any good. It means that we've all been corrupted because of our inclination to choose to do things that are not good, that are evil and sinful. So we're fallen. We've not attained the level of holiness, I guess you could say, that God intended for us to reach. But He fully knew at the beginning that we were going to fall. This is not shocking to God. He can see, He holds time in His hands. He can see the beginning and the end. And so that's the reality of the situation. Certainly people can do good things, but we all choose to do bad things as well. And we've got to be aware of that. We have pride, we have selfish ambition, we have vain conceit. We're tempted to be powerful, or tempted by power, I should say, by our selfish desires, by our lust. This is just the truth. Now, that same human nature, and this is the point, that same human nature that exists in society, in you and in me, also exists in our government. I don't know why there's a disconnect. I don't know. Some people refuse to believe, and I understand. Listen, the truth that I just laid out there, saying that we all miss the mark, that's not comfortable on some level to admit. You have to admit. In fact, if you look at the 10 Commandments, and you realize that we've broken probably all the 10 Commandments. When you factor in how Jesus, we all may not have literally murdered somebody, but the Bible says if you've hated someone in your heart, that you've committed murder. And so, yikes, if you've looked at a woman lustfully, you've committed adultery. Yikes. You start thinking of these things and you realize, man, the heart is depraved above all things, right? And the closer you are drawn to God, or the closer that God draws near to you, I think the more that you see your depravity and hopelessness. And so those same people, though, they're not different people. They're not a different species. They're not a different class of people. They want you to think that they are. The people who are elected leaders and politicians and so forth. I don't like to use the word leaders, but that's often what comes to mind. These are just elected officials. Leaders require people who follow them. Politicians who acquire power and force you to follow them are not leaders. If they were leaders, they wouldn't need to force you because you would do it on your own accord. But nonetheless, my friends, that same human nature that exists in us, that exists in society, exists in government. This is not complicated. And good intentions don't cancel out that human nature. Good intentions do not override that human nature. This is where we hear things like, oh, they mean well. They're trying to help people. They have good intentions. You know the saying, right? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Good intentions doesn't make it good. In fact, a good intention, even if it is a good intention today, it doesn't mean it will be a good intention tomorrow. I think of David when he goes up onto the roof of his palace, and there's a bazillion ways of looking at this. I don't know if he knew that there would be someone like Bathsheba bathing below or not, but it's conceivable to me that he was just out for an evening stroll, not having any intention, just to clear his mind and take a look at the city. I don't know. And then he looks down and sees Bathsheba and makes a series of evil choices. He didn't have intentions to do that, but in the blink of an eye, the beat of the heart, the snap of the finger, he can choose. We all can choose, even if our intentions are good up until that point, to flip the switch and just change it on a dime, as they say. So, political debate, unfortunately, often is it's reduced. That's the word I want to use. It's reduced to a debate about motives. And so there'll be disagreement about whether a certain policy or law is cruel or selfish or whatever. But in reality, we should be looking at what works in the real world, right? So for example, you can't just say, we're gonna make a law that says if you're not an illegal alien, you can't vote, and assume that nobody who's an illegal alien isn't going to try to vote. That's stupid. Why would we think that? Because human nature is exactly what I told you it is. If you have a driver's license, if you don't think you're going to get caught, if the system's right there and it's easy pickings, and you want to have a say in who's running the show in this country, why would you not vote? Especially when half of the Democrat Party doesn't care if you do or not. They're making it easier and easier for you to do so. And I'm just picking that. You can pick any issue, even a conservative issue, and you can say, the intentions aren't what matter. What matters is the results. What matters are the results. All right, my friends, time to take another time out here. That one of the biggest challenges as conservatives is finding ways to ensure our values align with the way that we live our lives. And that includes the way that we invest our money. That's why I love what the team at 48 Financial is doing. They specialize in biblically responsible investing. That means they screen out companies that don't align with our faith, our values, so that we are not funding things that go completely against what we believe in. They do the heavy lifting. All we have to do is complete the assessment. They will help align our investments with our purpose, with our goals, and to make sure that they are aligned with what we believe. So you can head on over to 48financial.com/Todd to take a quick and easy assessment. 48financial.com/Todd. That's where you take that assessment. It doesn't take long. They'll give you the information, and you can see to what degree your investments line up with your values. So time out for me, my friends. Quick time out. Be back here in just a minute. All right, my friends, final segment of the day. I know it is covering a lot here, but I think it's important stuff, and I appreciate you hanging in there with us and exploring these things with us, helping to develop a framework by which we can view these issues and help explain these things to other people. If you want the full report, I guess, and the articles and the written summary that you can share and reference and all that kind of stuff, just text the word truth to 317-785-1030. Again, text the word truth, 317-785-1030. That'll get you into the inner circle, and you'll get this information emailed to you each weekday about 5 o'clock Eastern time, I should say. So, friends, lots of confusion out there about kratom. You've probably read the headlines, heard the headlines. Most of those are based on synthetic junk that is not real kratom at all, and it's pushed on us by some shady salespeople. Real kratom is safe when it's natural, and it's not synthetic. It's not blended with all this other garbage out there. You just have to do your research and take a look at what the folks at Christopher's Organic Botanicals are bringing to the market. They have a trusted herbal option that's been used for generations. It's a real alternative for people looking for something that doesn't come with a warning label that's a mile long. You can start with the Kratom Starter Pack. Again, once you're comfortable, once you do your research and you know you want to give this a try, start with the Starter Pack. Coupon code Todd Huff gets you 10% off your first order. Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. That's Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. Truth, tradition, and transparency. All right, so I want to get through as much of this here as I can today. We talked about intentions in politics. Intentions are treated as proof that the policy should exist. It's wow, it's nice. It shows that we care. How about we determine it based upon whether or not it works, right? We live in a fallen world. We went through all this. We live in a fallen world. It doesn't matter what our intentions are. It matters what we're actually doing by instituting the policies and the decisions that we're creating as the law or just decisions of our society and government. And so we need to shift the conversation from intentions to the actual outcomes. Motives, my friends, don't eliminate human nature. And let me say this. I know this is where maybe we can get better sometimes at communicating. Because to you and I, we hear some of these policies and we roll our eyes and we think, what is wrong with these people? That there's no way in a million years that that's going to work. For example, I think about the reparations. There we go. Reparations, and I see all the fallout for what could potentially happen in California. It's driving people out of the state, all this sort of stuff. And it's easy to say that's foolish. What are you idiots thinking? And that's not helpful though, because to a lot of people, the intention is good. You're trying to right the wrongs of slavery or civil rights, treating blacks differently and not as equal people during the civil rights, prior to the civil rights movement and so forth. And again, some of us might say, look, that has nothing to do with me. I get all that. But some people say, well, the motive is there to try to make something right. But it doesn't eliminate human nature. It doesn't eliminate that this has to work in the real world, that people will always manipulate the system. You got to account for that. You also have to account for the people who are trying to do things that look good to the superficial out there so that they can win your vote, get your donation, get you to pick up the phone and call people for them. That's what happens. That's the reality. And power changes incentives. So, even the elected politician, a lot of people begin their career in quote unquote public service with sincere motives, but they get in there and they see how it works. I shared recently that there's a lawsuit of current and former members of Congress who are suing for back pay because Congress didn't supposedly, that's the allegation here, follow the law and give members of Congress cost of living adjustment raises dating back to 1992. And so do you think that that's what these people thought when they were running for office, that they're going to go work the system? I mean, maybe in some instances, but too many times I've seen conservatives go with, I think, good intentions, and they get there and they realize, human nature, it's easier to go along and get along than it is to stand up for principles. And then you wonder, why is this person, what happened to this person? They were such a promising candidate. It's easier just to lie low and not get on the radar and have all this hate directed at us. We have to understand that that's human nature. There's human nature for ambition. You get there, and if you don't toe the line of leadership, you're going to lose your seniority, or you're not going to get a seat on a committee that you want. There's ego. People desire to be recognized. They desire to have control. And not only that, but authority can change perspective. Leaders become insulated sometimes from the results of their decisions. They're surrounded by advisors and supporters that are saying one thing, when in reality, the rest of America is saying something much different. Holding office does not remove you from having human nature. It doesn't purify you from that. Human nature is a big part of this. The left doesn't understand it and accept it. I've got to go, though. SDG.